Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So in the last class, we went over and we finished the end of Kitab al-Salah. So in the last class, we finished the end of Kitab al-Salah, and then we talked about janazah and some of the things about burial, and then we started up with Kitab al-Zakah. And of course, this is the second of the main pillars of Islam that has to do with actions. And so usually this is how books of fiqh go. They'll start with salah, and then they'll start up with zakah. And of course, before salah is the prerequisites to salah, which is tahara. So I'll start with tahara, then salah. And then I'll go to zakah, and then som, and then hajj. And of course, umrah goes along with that. And so then we talked about the beginning of Kitab al-Zakah, and Yasif Shadid, the last two recordings, they got erased. So anyone who is following the recordings, they can go back and see number 16 and 17 or it'd be number 16 and 17 of the other set of Mutn Abi Shujaa, which is like the goal in bringing it close is the name of it. So you can look back and fill in the blanks that we're missing here. Of course, I'm not going to go over it with you guys again because we studied this, but they can go back, and anyone who's watching, they can go back and look there. I think it's going to be number 15, or it's going to be the last one before zakat, and then the first one of zakat, and someone can look at those two videos. So we stopped in the actual class where we're at. We stopped talking about the different conditions for zakat. And just a quick review is we talked about that for zakat to become obligatory, or it's only obligatory in 5 things. One was it's only obligatory in mawashi, which is the plural of mashia, which is like the animals, some of the animals that we talked about, and then also currency, which is usually silver and gold back in the day, and now it would also be like the currency that we use. Was zurur, and he says here with ethman is like currency, and was zurur is the crops, and then he says with thimar, and then this is the fruit, and this is only for dates and grapes, and urud tijara, which is like the thing buying and selling. So if we're trading and we buy things to trade, then this business that we have, whatever the profit comes out of this business, or whatever the worth of the things are in the business, if they're over the nisab, then they'll also have the same. It will basically take the same ruling as currency. With a couple differences, but these are all things that zakat comes in. And then he says one mawashi. Then he talks about the types of mawashi that it comes into. Just quick review. So he says that there's 3 types, and of them are the al-ibl, wa hiya al-iblu, wal-baqaru, wal-ghanam. And so there's the ibl, baqar, and ghanam. And so of course ibl is the camels, and then also al-baqar is the cows and whatnot, and then we also have wal-ghanam. This it covers both sheep and goats. So like ghanam encompasses ma'z as well as al-khuruf, which is like which is the sheep. And then he says shariah wujubiha sittatu ashya'. And so these 6 things that he says here, these 6 things will pretty much repeat themselves. And so we'll talk about these things in the next one, but some of them are going to be a little less. Of course, for the mawashi, he goes into detail here, and he talks about the mawashi and what these, like for these things, for it to become obligatory, 6 different conditions need to come into place. 1 is the person's Muslim. 2, he says al-Islam, and then 2, al-Hurriya, which is freedom, and then he says wal-milku tam, and that he completely owns this. This is his property completely, and 1 nisab. And nisab is the biggest thing that we'll look at, and he's actually going to have a chapter that talks about the nisab in detail. What is the nisab for every single different thing? So he's going to talk about what is the nisab for ibl, what is the nisab for baqar, what is the nisab for ghanam. He'll talk about each one of these things as well as the nisab for every thing, but it's the level, or like that base, that once it hits it, then after it goes, anything over this is going to have zakat on what was before. And sometimes there's different tiers. It's like you'd have, if there's so many animals, then after you go above this number, you're going to have to pay a certain thing. And then once you reach the next number, you're going to have to pay another thing. And so this is, sometimes they'll be tiered, and sometimes they'll be just a certain amount, such as like in currency, it'll be a certain amount. Anything over that, you pay zakat on the percentage of that. So he says, of course, these are the things that the person completely owns it. Milk tam, 1 nisab, which is that he's reached that amount. Wal hawl. Hawl is, anyone remember?
The full year, like a full lunar year.
Yes, it's a sana. Yeah, sana or full year, lunar year, as you said. And what saum? Anyone remember what saum is?
Grazing.
Yes, grazing. Yep. And so then he says, وَأَمَّا الْأَثْمَانِ, and he says, فَشَيْئَانِ الذَّهَبُ وَالْفِضَّةُ. Then he goes into athman, and of course the athman are the things that we have focused on, which are the gold and silver. And so these two are the things that there would be like zakat in. And also like that is like the currencies that we use now. This is agreed upon. This is of those modern day ijmat, that we could say that there's ijmat that the currency that we use has zakat in it. When we liken it to one of these. And so then he says here, وَشَرَائِطُ وُجُوبِ الزَّكَاةِ فِيهَا, like في الأثمان, and that's that ha goes back to al-athman. And he says خَمْسَةُ أَشْيَاء, and he's basically all those 6 things we talked about except Sawm. So he's going to talk about Islam, al-Hurriya, al-Milk al-Tam, wal-Nisab, wal-Hawl. So everything that we talked about, and then there's also except for some, because of course like your cows are not grazing, and like your your Benjamins aren't grazing. So he says here that these things, and I mentioned in the last class also, and from this we can understand that he did not mention that someone needs to be baligh, as opposed to salah, the person needs to be baligh in salah, and as opposed to and also he doesn't need to have an aql. So the crazy person that has money like stored away for him, or that inherited money, that money that's inherited for him, or that's set away in a trust fund for him that someone is taking care of for it, or for the kid that hasn't come of age and he's got money stashed away in like from his mirath and whatnot that people are overlooking, that money itself has zakat on it, even though this kid is not baligh, like he's still a kid. And so there's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ talks about don't let the zakat eat the orphan's money. So if he says don't let the zakat eat the orphan's money, then this is proof that the zakat would eat the orphan's money if he didn't do something with it. Of course, if he put this money into actual things and put it into businesses and interactions and whatnot and moved it, then it's not going to get eaten by zakat just right away. Like, it's not going to get eaten right away because he put it into things that are moving or different, or maybe he bought a house with it. The house, there's no zakat on it. Or if you buy like things that are useful for the kid, then this thing is not necessarily going to have zakat on it unless it falls in these other categories. So from that hadith we get that yes, there is zakat in that, and of course just from the umum of khud min amwalihim sadaqatan tutahhirakum. And so min amwalihim, so we'd say that amwalihim, this is umum, because we have the amwal and we have him. So then we have this jama', and this jama' mudaf ila ma'rifah. And so this is where that amwalihim, all of their amwal. And so this would be every single person, and it doesn't exclude the kids from this. We have to have some clear evidence to exclude kids from this, or the kids' money. And also having this other hadith talking about don't let the zakat get eaten by don't let the kids' inheritance get eaten by zakat, or like the yatim. Then this is also another big evidence to show that there is like zakat in that. And of course, like the Hanafis, they say that there isn't zakat in that. There's one thing, the Hanafis are a little different. And so the next thing he goes into, and I believe we talked just a little bit about this as well. He says, وَأَمَّا الزُّرُوعُ فَتَجِبُ الزَّكَاةُ فِيهَا بِثَلَاثَةِ شَرَائِطَ. And he says, الزُّرُوعُ, and الزُّرُوعُ is like the plural of zara'. So you have zara', and the plural of zara', which is like farming, is zuru'. And he means like the things that is mazru'. So like this is like you'd have like sometimes you'll have a mustard that is in the place of ism maf'ul. And this is of those cases like zuru', which is like the things that are grown. And of these things that are grown, these are, he'll give a little description here. He says, فَتَجِبُ الزَّكَاةُ فِيهَا بِثَلَاثَةِ شَرَائِطٍ. Is it everything that's grown, or is it like, or is it only certain things? So he gives these 3 conditions to narrow it down. أَنْ يَكُونَ مِمَّا يَزْرَعُهُ الْآدَمِيُّونَ. That it is from the things that humans actually grow this thing. So if you have if you guys are ever in Washington, you'll probably see that there's so many wild blueberries out there. And there's nobody does anything about the blueberries. The blueberries come up without you wanting it. So like, of course, you getting getting blueberries from that doesn't have zakat on it, unless it was something that someone actually grew themselves. Like if, or not, this is like blackberries. Pardon me, not blueberries, but blackberries. They grow up everywhere and they're thorny, but you can eat them and you can benefit from them. But this is not something that we necessarily grow. It's something that comes by itself. So there would not be zakah if someone got enough. And like to say if this were something that was actually used. But this is a bad example because this is doesn't meet the next condition. But if there was other type of grain, say there's a type of grain that sprouted up without anybody doing anything for it, or like growing it naturally, then in this case it wouldn't actually have zakat in it for someone gathering it. If it was just like a wild grain. And he says here, وَأَنْ يَكُونَ قُوتًا مُدَّخِرًا. And he says, and qut is something that people can live off of. So this varies from balad to balad, like from land to land, and from culture to culture. This will be different. So here in Egypt, maybe the qut here is qamh, which is the like would be grain or like the wheat. So wheat would be kind of the qut. Also, you could also say that like rice. And these two are pretty much around the world. These are two staples that people will live off of. If they have them, they're not going to starve. And in some places, maybe that qut is not this. Like in Medina at the time, it would be tamar. Tamar was qut. They could live off of the tamar. And they would do this because, of course, like Medina is not like conducive to grains and whatnot. At the time, it was not necessarily producing grains, but it was producing like tamar, and this was what they live off of. So at that time, that was qut. For them. It's something that they can live off of, and that is a staple in that land. In some places, maybe it's corn, maybe it's a type of corn that they live off and whatnot, and it's something that can be stored. Like he says, qutan muddakharan. And this is also key, that it can be stored. And so if you have like, let's say tamar, or like the dates, the dried dates, you can store them for a long period of time. There's nothing that's going to go bad with them. And the same thing with like, if you have uruz, the rice you can store this, and the same thing with all the other grains, you can store these grains. So these are things that would have zakat in them if they, of course, it's grown by humans, and also as qut muddakhiran, and this would be like a second. You could say qut muddakhiran is like a third condition here, and then the fourth one here, if you were to add the other conditioning, since he said muddakhiran, which is also a condition, and he says wa an yakuna nisaba. And so this is the last condition, which is that it reaches that nisab. And so he says here, وَهُوَ خَمْسَةُ أَوْسُقٍ لَا قِشْرَ عَلَيْهَا. And so he says in the type of the nisab here, he gives it here, and he says it's خَمْسَةُ أَوْسُق. And a wasq is as one of these types, and of course this is a volumetric measurement. And so this if someone puts like a certain amount of kilograms to this, it's going to be a little different from grain to grain and from thing to thing, because awsuq is not necessarily it's not a weight, it's an actual value, but this amount is a big amount, like roughly, if I were to from what I'm remembering, it would be like if you had a big pickup truck and you had it filled to the brim, you're almost around what this would be. So of course, if someone's a real farmer, then of course they would have it, like if they have a real farm. But if they're just like they just kind of farm on the side for extra benefit, they have a couple date trees or whatever, if we were to say that dates are that, but the dates will come in the next one. But if they had just like a little bit of farm and they're just growing a little bit, then they won't have any until they reach khamsata awsuq, which is a lot. And off the top of my head, I don't remember what the actual like detailed volumetric measurement. I can go back inshallah and find that for you guys. And he also says la kishra alayha. So like if you have, of course, there's a difference between the volume of like rice that has the actual hull, like the hull, which is the seed casing, as opposed to taking off the seed casing. He says la kishra, and kishra is like the casing that's on the seed. And so without that casing, then you would count without the case, not with the case. And then he said la kishra alayha. And so that you wouldn't count that. So if it comes up to khamsa to awsuq, then everything after that would have if it made these conditions: one, it's grown by humans; two, it's something that's a staple food that can be stored; and also that it meets the nisab, and that it meets that level, which is khamsa to awsuq, 5 of these wasq. Then it would have zakat in it. And then he goes into the next category from the 5 that he mentioned. This is where we stopped off in the last class. He said, وَأَمَّا الثِّمَارُ فَتَجِبُ الزَّكَاةُ فِي شَيْئَيْنِ مِنْهَا ثَمْرَةُ النَّخْلِ وَثَمْرَةُ الْكَرْمِ. So it says here, as for thimar, which is like fruits. So there's a difference between zara and fruits. Like zara is like the crops on the ground that you would necessarily get. And of course, he narrowed it down, not just any crop, but the crops that are stored in, that are staple food, that would have it. But as for thimar is like the fruits. So these are like fruits that you would get like from trees and whatnot. And he says then there's only two of them. And it's not just fruit, but also like grapes. Grapes is not technically from a tree; it's like from a vine, but it's still thimar in Arabic. And so he says it's just on these two. One is thamaratul nakhl and thamaratul karm, and karm is grapes, and so inab. And some people say it's best not to use the word karm because of a hadith that was narrated in this meaning, and of course like because this is something that like kareem is like for the Muslim. But rather like karam is was used in Arabic to mean like inab, which is grapes. So he says these two, since they can be stored and whatnot, and they have this, and this is like the thing that connects them, is one, they can be stored. Like so if you have dates, you can store these for a long period of time. And the same thing with grapes. Grapes can be turned into raisins, and that can be stored indefinitely. And so these are the only two that the madhab will talk about that'll like affirm because of this essence of you can store it. And of course the tamr is the one that has like the text on it, and then the grapes are like qiyas. We're using qiyas on it because it has this ability to be stored, and because of this ability to be stored, and also could be like lived off of like per se, then because of these two things, then you can they make qiyas on the dates in this particular issue. Yeah.
How about like cranberries and like anything that's like like dried? Dry
yeah, and these days we do have a lot of this. Allahu alam. And this I haven't seen anything that I've come across reading in the madhab. They don't go anywhere except for just these two. And even this is a leap. Like for this there's a huge debate within like going to the leap of actually making the qiyas in the first place. So this is a leap to make it to actually include grapes. So to bring it in and open it up a little bit, this is a whole thing. I haven't seen any of that from what I've come across. I haven't seen them talk or add anything other than that, but rather they are on the defensive when it comes to even putting in grapes. And that, wallahu ta'ala alam. But yes, if we hold this meaning, we would say why not?
Yeah.
Why not dried mangoes? Why not dried all these other fruits that we can make? This is a great question. And of course, sometimes there'll be qiyas that has something that stops these other things from coming in, and there's a difference between these two. And there's not that difference that's found here.
Yeah.
And so this is something when you look in qiyas, why did it not reach all of these things? And that's usually a big, long discussion as well. Wallahu ta'ala alam. And he says here, وَشَرَائِتُ وُجُوبِ الزَّكَاةِ فِيهَا. So he's going to talk about, for these things, there's conditions. He says, فِيهَا أَرْبَعَةُ أَشْيَاء. So there's four things that need to be there for zakat to come into the thimar. He says, al-Islam, al-Hurriya, wal-Milk al-Tam, wal-Nisab. So these things, which are pretty much a repeat of the first one, except he doesn't talk about like the qut muddakhiran, but rather you could take the first one and get rid of the year passing on it. One, because it's crops, they come yearly. So that in crops in general, he didn't mention that in the first one. They come yearly, so they're not going to have that year that the wealth passed upon. No, when you got it, that's when it comes. And so like this is to give it when it comes off. When you get the harvest, then this is when you would give out the zakah. And so this comes once a year typically. So this is not a condition. And so it just needs to be that this person's Muslim, that he's free, and that he owns it, and then he reaches the nisab with the amount. He'll talk about the nisab inshallah. And he says, وَأَمَّا الْعُرُوضُ التِّجَارَةُ وَأَمَّا عُرُوضُ التِّجَارَةِ فَتَجِبُ الزَّكَاةُ فِيهَا بِالشَّرَائِطِ الْمَذْكُورَةِ فِي الْأَثْمَانِ. And so he talks about for عُرُوضُ التِّجَارَةِ, this is the trading goods. So if someone goes into business, they starts trading things, flipping things, maybe buying a house, flipping it, buying cars, flipping them, fixing them up, doing whatever they do, they're trading. But they're using this, they're putting their money into things, and they're expecting when they put their money into that thing to trade it, to flip it for a profit. Like they're doing, this was their intention when they bought it. If they were given something and then later they decided, I'm going to trade it, this doesn't come into it. So the person needs to have, now when they got this item, they need to have had the intention that they're going to sell it when they bought this item. And they need to have gotten it that way. And also, if someone was given an item, say someone gave someone a nice car, and this guy was given the car, he didn't buy the car, so you wouldn't say he was trading this car because he didn't buy it from the get-go. Even if he does have the intention, I'm going to buy it and get money from this, it wouldn't fall into that trading because he didn't get it with muawada. Like he didn't get it with with putting any money. And so this is, if he was trading something for it at the beginning, of course then he traded something. But if he got it without any type of trade or any type of giving and taking, then in this case it won't fall into urud al-tijara until he sold it and got the money and then bought something else. That's when it would start. And if he didn't start it with other things. But that's when that money would come into it. And also that he needs to have the intention when he bought it. He needs to have the intention that he's doing tijara, that he's doing trading when he bought these things. And also of these conditions here that he mentions here, of course, all of these need to reach the nisab that is mentioned in, that is for it's all the same conditions as the currency. It's all the same conditions, except when it comes to the hawl works a little different. Like the year starts from the beginning of the year for urud al-tijara. You start at the beginning of whenever the trade or like the trading started. You start at the beginning of this, and if you fall below this for some reason, because you're trading back and forth, maybe you bought the money, you sold this, and you got the money from this. No longer do you have the trading goods, but now you have this money, now you're going to buy something else. You're still in the action of doing this, so you start at the beginning of the year, and at the end of the year, you don't look at what's in between. If it dipped below, we don't look and see if it dipped below. We look at the end of the year. What do I have? Did I meet the nisab at the end of the year? I met the nisab, so then I'm going to pay it. Or so in that case, that's how you look at it. So it's a little different as opposed to with currencies. If I was saving money, and then for whatever reason I had say like I had something happen, maybe my car broke down, I had to pay a bunch of expenses, and then my savings dropped down below the nisab. And then I saved a little bit more money and I came back up. And then if I were to say at the end of that year I'm still at the nisab, do I have to give now, or do I wait until a year turned on the time when I came back up? And so in this case, you would wait until you came back up over it, and once you came back up, it starts then. And if you ever go down, it stops until a whole year passes until it comes back. This is when it comes to like the savings. Like if you have like money that's saved, or gold, silver, or like actual currency that's saved, you would look at it in that case. As opposed to like the trading, you wouldn't look at this. At the end of it, you'd see, did I make it enough? And maybe like there's like a change or something, and then you would pay at the end of that year with if you made the nisab at the end of the year, you would look at it then, but you wouldn't look at the nisab in the middle of the year.
How about like manufacturing, like if you were to buy two separate things?
This is this is different. As far as manufacturing, this is one thing. As far as like if someone were to so if you were to buy parts to a car and then put it together, or you were to buy like say you're a carpenter and you buy things and sell it, this would not fall under it.
There's no zakah.
No.
Okay.
No, there's no zakah on that, because you're the one who came up with it at the beginning. You didn't buy it. You didn't get this thing as it is.
Right.
You actually put something into it and made it into the thing that it is, and it wasn't that thing before you put it there. So there wouldn't be the urud al-tijara. That's a very good. That's a very good question. I was going to get there, inshallah. So like someone, if they're a carpenter and they put things together, or they make things, or they're a craftsman, these things that they crafted, if it wasn't in that condition beforehand when they bought the materials and then they put it together, then in this case there's no zakat on it. As urud al-tijara, there's no zakat there. If they were to trade and do things, that's something else. But it's not just businesses in general, but rather it's trading. If that's clear. Any questions about this chapter before we move on? Because he's going to talk about the nisab for each one of these in the next couple of chapters. All right. So he says here, faslun. And so Abu Shujaa, he says, faslun, rahimahullah, wa awwalu nisab al-ibli khamsun, wa fiha shatun. So he says the beginning of the nisab for the ibl is 5. So if there's 5, this person owns 5 ibl, 5 camels, then he has zakat in it, and that is a shat. A shat is a single lamb. So like a single lamb and also like a goat or whatever. It's like one of the ghanam. But here it would be like a single lamb or something. Then this would be given for 5. And then he says, وَفِي عَشْرٍ as شَاتَانِ. So he has here, and then for ashra, for ashr, this is like for 10 camels, then it would be 2. So what is for 6? How many is there for 6? And how many is there for 7? How many is there for 8? How many is there for 9? Anyone answer? So if I had 8 camels, I don't have 5, I have 8. How many do I pay?
Just the one, yeah.
One, yeah. And there's no going between, so there's tiers. So if you're on that tier, all of the things until you break that next tier, you're at that same tier. Then once you break that next tier, then you pay 2. And this is how all of them will work in the future. And this comes from the letter that Abu Bakr, the letter of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu that he wrote. He said, في 24 من الإبل فما دونها من الغنم من كل 5 شاة. من كل 5 شاة. So he talks about, and he has this whole, he talks about each one of these little tiers and all the different types in this. It's quite a long letter, so I'm not going to read all of it, but this basically, all of it comes from this one letter that he wrote when he was describing what is zakah for the people that were that needed to know what zakah was. So he explained it to them in this letter, and this is where the basis is in this hadith. It's very, very long hadith, because it's basically a letter. And so he says here, and so we went to fi ashrin shatani, so 2. And he says, وَفِي 15 ثَلَاثُ شِيَاهٍ. And so, and then for 15 camels, then there would be 3 shia. And like shia is the plural of shat. So you have shah, and then like the plural is shiyahin, or like shiyahun. And so that's the plural for this. And of course, if you wonder, why is he not giving a camel? A camel's worth a lot. So of course, like giving a camel out of like 1 of 5 of camels, like, are you going to give 1, or what are you going to do here? So in this case, if he didn't have any shet, he would go buy one. He would go buy one with his money,
okay.
And then he would give it.
So is zakah not? You don't give it the worth of it. You give it like the actual.
It should be certain things, and like the madhab of Shafi'i is that you give the actual things they're narrated. You give from the actual goods itself. So if you have gold, you give from the gold that you have. You don't give other money in place of the worth of that gold. You actually give from the gold that you have. If you have silver, you actually give from the silver that you have. If you have actual fruit and whatnot, you give from that fruit.
So how do you apply that?
And so here, of course, if someone didn't have shah, like he didn't have a shah, he goes and buy one, and that's fine. But he needs to give that thing. He can't just go give the money of that shah. He can't go see how much is a shah. I'm going to give this much money. No, he needs to go buy a shah and then give this to the poor and needy.
But if you were in like,
or like to these,
if you were like, and how, well, like who would you give it to?
And so this is, of course, like when there's a actual, at the time of like khilafah, if there was a khilafah, the khilafah a lot of times would have someone who went around and made sure that all of this got to the right places. And the person that was, he'd be called the musaddiq, which is the person who gets the sadaqah. And so he would go out and he would get the sadaqah from the people, and he gets a portion of the sadaqah as well, because he's appointed from the Khalifa, Amir al-Mu'mineen. So he would get a portion of this as well, but this person would actually know where to get it out to all the other people. And of course, if we don't have this, then we would make sure that at the end of this chapter, he's actually going to go through the 8 categories of people that actually get the zakah. And we'll talk about the actual categories in detail. And so the person, if we don't have this person who's going to do it for us, then we need to go do it ourselves. Like go find someone, or find someone who knows how to do it. And of course, they don't take any money for doing that, and they don't take anything from the zakat itself. They don't take anything from the zakat itself to do this.
So like in the modern day, if you like, because you know how they collect it in masjid.
Yeah.
You can't do this if you aren't sure the masjid doesn't know what they're doing.
All you should just do enough research to know that the people are trustworthy, and that the person who is doing that, that he is at least knowledgeable when it comes to zakah. And also, if you know that some of these charity organizations are taking money from the zakah that people give them, they're taking money from the zakah as if they are of the amilina alayha. And so, like, as if they're the people that work on it. And this is what comes in the ayah. And so they think that they fall into this ayah, but this is wrong. The people that are mentioned in this ayah are people that are set from the Khalifa. The Khalifa, he has actual government appointed officials that do this, and they're the ones that get it if they're appointed. But these aren't appointed. These are people that are helping people do the job. And they're helping people do the job. They take the ruling of wakala, or like they're wakil, which is someone who does something on behalf of you. And so in this case, they don't take anything for this. And so just make sure that the person, one, he knows he's trustworthy, and when it comes to Bab al-Zakah, he's trustworthy. And two, and of course he's trustworthy in general, that he's not stealing. And two, that he also is not taking any of this money for himself. And he knows that it's Zakah. And of course, if anyone's giving their Zakah money, they need to make sure that they are making sure the person knows it's Zakah. Because there's rulings connected to this. And it's also, it's good for someone when they're doing something that's obligatory, it's good for them to be public about it. Such as like when we have Salah in Jama'ah. We have Salah in Jama'ah, this is something that's obligatory. Being public about our Salah is something that's good. And also the other things of like Sawm and whatnot, if it's obligatory, then it's good for people to know about it, because this is as opposed to charity that is extra, like that you're doing it for something extra. Then in this case, keeping it silent is good. But of course, if it's Zakat, this is obligatory, and people should know, so they know that to deal with the money properly, and they know where it came from and what you're doing with it. And also, so someone doesn't like think that somebody doesn't give Zakat. You know, they know this person gives Zakat, so whatever. If this person's like a rich person, they know that they give their Zakat, and whatnot. And so, okay, so we talked about these. We went through the 15. It has three sheep. Let's say sheep for Shia. And he says, وَفِي عِشْرِينَ أَرْبَعَةُ شِيَاهٍ. And then if he gets up into 20, which is 20, then there's the four sheep. وَفِي خَمْسٍ وَعِشْرِينَ بِنْتُ مَخَاضٍ. And so this is the next one that he talks about here, which is, and the bint al-mukhad, this is one that has, it's 1 year old. A bint al-mukhad is a female camel. This is the first camel that comes up, and this is after 25 camels. Then there's one female camel that is 1 year old, and she started in her second year. She's 1 year old, and she started in her second year. This is bint al-mukhad. And then and so there's one bint al-mukhad, and this is for the 25. And then وفي ست وثلاثين بنت لبون. And then if there's 6, there's 36. Then in this case there would be bint al-labun. And this is another name for that, which is, and she's 2 years old. This is a female camel, 2 years old, and she started on her third year. And so she's entered into her third year. And then, and the next tier is وَفِي سِتٍ وَأَرْبَعِينَ حِقَّةٍ. And a hiqqatun is, she's 3 years old, and she started with her fourth year. And the reason they call it hiqqa is because she's a haqiqa, and like she's mustahiqqa, and like to actually bear children. And so like, not children, but of course camels. So she's and like mustahiqqa, and she has that right, or she's at the prime time to actually start having kids. And of course, this is the next time this is at the 46. At 46, then there would be 1 hiqqa. And then he says وَفِي إِحْدَى وَسِتِّينَ جَذْعَةٍ. And this is for if someone had 61. Now this category, it'd be a jad'a, and the jad'a is 4 years old. And this would be a 4-year-old camel that has entered into the 5th year. And of course, the bigger they get, the more worth they have, and they're actually like large as well. So of course, like their worth comes up. This is why we have these different categories here. And then also في 91 حقتان. And so like if there's 91, then there would be 2 hiqqas. And we have 2 of these. And then also وفي 121 ثلاث بنات لبون. ثلاث بنات لبون. And so then we'd also have after, like we have, what is this? 121, then there would be 3 بنات لبون. And then after this, it kind of has, there's kind of a set number for 40, and then there's a set number for 50. And so every 40 after that, ثم في كل 40 بنت لبون. Then after every 40 after that, you would say, for every group of 40, there's going to be 1 bint labun. وَفِي كُلِّ 50 حِقَّةٍ. And so then for every 50, there would be 1 hiqqa. And so you do the math. You say, okay, you have like 200. You can break it up this way or break it up that way. And so you would look at how many for every 40, it would be this, and every 50, it would be this.
So you don't have to do both.
And so if it reached over one and it didn't reach over the other, you would have to do the one that it reached, and so you would always do the one that is more in that case. And so that's how it goes. And of course, most of us are not doing this, so we're not going to go into super details. Of course, in bigger books, they'll go into details with this. And also, the next one he's going to do is fasl, and he's going to talk about the for cows. He says fasl wa awlu nisab al-baqari 30 and وفيها تبيع. And so he says, and the first for the nisab of the cows is 30. So if you have more than 30 cows, then this time you give it tabi'a. And the reason it's called tabi'a is because it follows the mother around. So this is like a young bull that follows his mother around, and I believe it's 1 year old. I believe he's 1 year old, and he still follows his mother. Let me see. And he says he has 1 year. Nahu sanatun min al-baqar. Yeah, because he follows his mother. And so this is a 1 year old bull that follows his mother around. And so this is what is, if someone has reached 30, then they have 1 tabiyah, which is 1 year old bull. And then also in fi arba'ina musinna. And then this is after 40, or in 40, and then there's musinna, and this is 2 year old. She's 2 years old. This is a female, a heifer, 2 years old, and like her teeth have started coming in. That's why you call musinna, because she's getting her teeth. It's sin. And so, and وعلى هذا أبنا فقس, and that's what he says. And on these two, for every 30, you have 1 tabiyah, and every 40, you have 1 musinna. So, however, if you have 70, you have 1 of each. If you have 80, then you have 2 musinna. And so, if you had 90, then in this case you would have the 3, the 3 tabiyah, I think it would be like atba', but Allahu A'lam, the jama' taksir. So then he says here, and so this is for when it comes to herds of cattle, and this is easy. This is pretty simple. It's 30 and 40, and then he says fasl wa awlu nisab al-ghanami 40. And so, as far as the ghanam, which are the sheep or goats, these it's 40. وَفِيهَا شَاتٌ جَذَعَ. And so this is 1 shat, and jadha means like the teeth started coming in. And this is the one that has finished 1 year and started in its 2nd year. So this is a jadha. And so this is min ad-da'n, and so he says ad-da'ni min ad-da'n. And this is of the sheep. Ad-da'n is sheep. And sometimes they'll say dani, like they'll say like this is lahm dani, which is like da'ni. Yeah, but of course, like the hamza in the middle of a word, a lot of times it gets replaced with the alif. As you see, sham is actually shatm. Also, fa'r, a lot of times they'll say fa'r. Both of these are sahih. And so like you'll say min ad-da'ni. And here in Egypt, they'll say dani. Yeah, and the same thing with fa'r. You'll see they'll say fa'r. And the same thing with rats. You'll say rasi. Yeah, it's sahih. Like there's no problem with it. It's actually easier to say. But here he says min ad-da'ni. So of course there's 1 shah that is from ad-da'ni, and that is in jadha, which is 1 year old and started in the 2nd year. Min ad-da'ni aw thaniyatun min al-ma'z. So it's either from the, if you're going to give it in a khuruf, like you're going to get it from a sheep, then it needs to be 1 year old that started in the 2nd year. Or thaniya min al-ma'z, which is a little, this is the one that's finished 2 years from goats and started in its 2nd year. And that's like thaniya. It's like the thaniya sana, thaniya. And so like that has gone. So either you give it in this way or you give it in that way. And he says, وَفِي مِئَةٍ وَعِشْرِينَ شَاتَانِ. So this is the next tier. And so once someone, if for all the way from arba'in to 121, and then all the way that's just one of this or one of that. Once they have more than this, then it's 2 shat. And then he says, which is like two of these, either the shat jadha or the other, the ma'za thaniya. It's 2 of these. And wafi mi'ataini wa wahidatin thalathu shiyahin. And so if someone has 201, then it's going to be 3 of these. And then also he says wafi arba'i mi'atin arba'u shiyahin. And so like in 400, then you would have four of these that you would give out. And ثم في كل مئة شاة. Then it would be every mia you would have one shah that's given out. So that's like 1/100th of like the number. So this is the basis for the ghanam. And all of this, of course, the evidence, it comes in that letter that came from the book that was written by Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So the next thing he talks about is just a little, an extra bit to follow up on when it comes to these animals. How do we know like what that number is? Maybe you and your friends, you graze, you like mixed your herds. So like if you had, say I had like 35 and he's got like 40, or he's got like 32, and so like each one of us, we wouldn't have anything for us individually, but we all graze together. We all put them in the same pen, and they all share the same shepherd. He's going to talk about these things, and they all get milked in the same place, or and they have the same stud that goes to all of them. They're basically the same. So this group, even though you own 35 and I own 20, I'm gonna say that, like this group, all of them reach 40. So there should be one that comes out of it. And so if they're mixed together, completely mixed, even though we know who's who. Like we know this person owns this one, but they're all together in the same place, then they would be considered this way. And this is what he's going to talk about. This. He says, وَالْخَلِيطَانِ يُزَكِّيَانِ زَكَاةَ الْوَاحِدِ يُزَكِّيَانِ زَكَاةَ الْوَاحِدِ بِسَبْعِ شَرَائِطَ. And so he says, in these that are mixed together, you got two herds mixed together. Al-khalit is the thing that's makhlut. This is like the fa'il bima'na maf'ul. And so these that are the mixed herds, they get given the zakat as one herd if they have these 7 conditions made. One of them, إذا كان المراح واحدا, and the marah is the place that they go out, or they go out, or the place that they come back to. Their pen, marah, is from the place of return, where their pen is one, wahidan. And also he says here, wal masrah wahidan. And so like the place that they go out and graze in, this is the same place that they go out and graze. So their pen is the same, the place they go out and they graze from is the same. Wal mar'a wahidan. Or like the masrah is the path to the grazing, and the mar'a is the actual grazing that they graze from. And this is the same. And he says, wal fahlu wahidan. And the stud, the fahl is the stud, the male that gets them pregnant, that gets the females pregnant. This is the fahl. And if he's one, or like they share this, then and also here he says wal mashrab wahidan. So they all come to the same trough or the same place. Maybe they have a river that they all come to the same place. They come together. Wal halibu wahidan. And the person who does the halib is the person who milks. Like if you have halib, which is like the milk itself, they'll say halib for milk, and halib is the person who does the milking. It's ism fa'il from halaba, and so like you have, so if he's the same, and we'll talk about this. Just put a little note on this. This is something that is debated. وَمَوْضِعُ الْحَلْبِ وَاحِدًا. And also the place that they get milked is the same. And the last two things here, Imam. And this is something that like Imam An-Nawawi talks about in other books, that this is not a condition here. Like the fact that the milker is the same, or that the place that they milk, this is not a condition. But rather you could change this. And Al-Khatib al-Shirbini, he talks about an ikna. He says you could change this with the shepherd is the same, or they use one shepherd. Like they share the same shepherd, or maybe the shepherd takes turns from this person to this person, but it's the same shepherd. If the shepherd is one, and they share a shepherd, then in this case that would take the place of the halib wahid and mawdi' al-halb wahid. This is actually a weak opinion in the madhab. So the milking and the place of milking, this is a weak opinion, and rather if you changed it with the shepherd, then it would be great. Like there would be no problem with that. And of course, this is the benefit of going and looking at the shuruh. Sometimes they'll pick up some of the mistakes. And most of the times in this class, I usually review al-Iqna'. So like for the class, I always look at Iqna', which is the book that Al-Khatib Shirbini, rahimahullah, he wrote this, which is a compilation of his, he has a sharh on at-tanbih which is it used to be one of the books, that's Imam al-Shirazi. He gave a sharh on this, and this used to be that high level book that people would study when they actually got somewhere in the madhab. They would study tanbih, and this was like high level, and then it got replaced with minhaj. And pretty much like now we study minhaj as that high level book. After that, you've actually done something in the madhab. And so he also did a sharh on that book as well, al-minhaj, which is Mughni al-Muhtaj. Of course, all of you, when you get to al-minhaj, you'll want this book. You'll need to have this book. But basically, these two shuruh, he did the tanbih first, and then he did also Mughni al-Muhtaj. And then he basically went and he was asked to make a sharh for Mutn Abi Shujaa. So he took all of the things that he did in those two and put them into a mukhtasar and on the sharh of Abu Shujaa. So I go to Iqna', and this is the book that I read a lot. Because it's kind of like, you'll find a lot of the same things in Minhaj that are there, except it's written in an easy way with the dalil right next to it, with the evidences right next to it, and with like a lot of extra, it's easier to read as opposed to, it's not quite a matan, but it's also not necessarily like explaining a lot of things, because it's also mukhtasar from his other two big books. So like the khulasa, or like the best of all he did, he put onto the sharh Iqna' and Mutn Abi Shujaa. And so I'll go to that, and this is where I'll see that he has a lot of views, such as like he caught this from Al-Halib, is not actually something that is there, but rather it's this, and he'll bring up a lot of things. So most of the time I will refer to him if there's anything that is like contrary to the strong opinion in the madhab. I'll refer to Iqna', and this is also a book that once, like my Shaykh Ahmed Rushdi, he mentions here that, or he mentions that the way for a student of the Shafi'i madhab is like four books, main books that he would study. First, Mutn Abi Shujaa, like right away, just the matan, he understands it in general, like this is what we're doing here. Then the one after this, he would go into Iqna'. And then if he studied Iqna', then he would study after this the matan of al-minhaj, and then he would go to Mughni al-Muhtaj, which is also the same author of Iqna'. And after these three, then he's basically by himself, and he's at a great level. He basically gives these four things. Some people, they give a lot of levels. They say before you get to Mutn Abi Shujaa, you need to do al-Muqaddimah, Hadd-Duramiyya, and also Safinat al-Najah, and they put like 4 levels before you even get to every single bab of fiqh. And so sometimes he basically, my Shaykh, Hafidhullah, he basically says, start with Mutn Abi Shujaa, then go to Iqna', and then after this, go to Minhaj, and then after this, go to Mughni al-Muhtaj. And after that, you basically have everything that you need. And if someone actually were to compare Iqna' to the other books that they tell you to read, it's basically like the same thing. You'll have the beginning, it looks like the same thing, and it'll have like there'll be differences here and there, like of things, but it's very like it'll have all the things. So once you've studied these other books and you go and read Iqna', it's a great review. And this is just a way of like for someone who's studying the Mutn Abi Shujaa, after they study Mutn Abi Shujaa, and if they want to go review in a great way, then Iqna' is like that. It's a big step, but it's a good step. Like once someone gets Iqna', and this used to be what they studied in like the high school. They used to finish Iqna'. And like in Azhar, the Azhari high school, they would finish Iqna' in that. And of course, someone who finishes Iqna' now is like an alim, like they don't even do this. Like they basically watered it down, took little parts and pieces, and now like in Ba'uth, they basically don't give anyone anything of Iqna', and the teachers are very sad. Like a lot of them are sad, but Allah Mustaan. So this is here we talked about the mixed. Going back to the subject here, we talked about the mixing of the two herds. And so also another thing to note is that nobody should be mixing or breaking up their mixing to be scared of zakah. And of course, when someone mixes, if they only mixed one and they had mixed, they would pay the certain amount. So you would give one of this, and the other person would pay the remainder of the worth of this, according to the amount of cattle that he had. So say we have someone, he has 30 sheep, and the other guy has 20 sheep. So together they make 40. They're going to give one. This guy that gives 30, he can give one of his, and then the other person will pay him for that part, which would be 2/3. Like be 2/3 of the price of that sheep. He'd pay him for that, so that one sheep that comes out would be paid for contributed by both by both parties. And so this is the way that they would do it. They break it out by however much there is. But if someone's trying to escape zakat, they know, I'm going to have to pay zakat if I don't do this. So then they do it so that they can lessen the zakat. This is haram. And this is something that no one, of course, don't play with Allah. And then what Allah has put here. So Allah knows that people are playing, and sometimes people will play these games, and these games are haram, for someone to play. Sometimes people will say, oh, the howl has to be there for the whole year. So I'm going to give my money to a brother. I'll say, hold this $5,000,
for 2 months or
and or he gives it right back.
Oh.
They do this stupid game, and Allah knows exactly what they're doing. There's no playing with this, and this person's he's holding money away from where it's supposed to be, and Allah doesn't play these games. And of course, this person is that game is haram for him to play, and it's something that people should fear Allah when it comes to this money, as this is of the things that the Prophet ﷺ talks about in a long hadith, where the person who holds back zakah, holds back the money of zakah, will come back on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah as a tha'ban, as a snake, or like a Shujaa, which is a type of a viper that will come and bite him on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah, and it'll come back and haunt him. And also the people that held back zakah from the flocks, it will come back and trample them on a day that is 50,000 years. And then after, it'll come back and trample them over and over, and come back in herds and herds. And then after this, they will see their place either to either to Jannah or to the hellfire. وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. And so this, of course, no one should be playing games when it comes to zakat. And also, this is the rights of the people that are allotted the zakat. This is their rights to this money. So no one should ever be playing with the rights of this. And anyone who tries to escape that zakat, they're falling into a serious sin. And they should fear Allah. So also coming up, and it's going to talk about the next thing, which is also important for us to pay attention, because this is where it actually refers to us. He says, فَصْلٌ وَنِصَابُ الذَّهَبِ 20 مثقالا وفيه ربع العشر وهو نصف مثقال وفيه ما زاد بحسابه. And so he says, the nisab for dhahab, which is gold, 20 مثقالا. And this equates, the mithqal is one of these. Let's say one of them equates to 4 grams of gold. Takriban 1 mithqal. And so 20 of this comes out to 80. So 80 grams of gold. When someone reaches 80 grams of gold, then zakat is due upon that gold, and they need to give, how much is it? He says, وَهُوَ نِصْفُ الْمِثْقَالِ. And so how much does he give? فِيهِ رُبُعُ الْعُشْرِ. And here it is. He says, فِيهِ رُبُعُ الْعُشْرِ. Rubu', of course, fu'ul, when it comes to the numbers, is like a fourth. So you have arba, that's 4. Rubu' is a fourth. This is the way that and you also have ushur. This is the same way as a tenth. And so he says rubu' al-ushr, which is a fourth of a tenth. So a fourth of a tenth, which is how much? It's 2.5%.
How do you define nisab in English?
It's the term he gives is a threshold.
Okay,
There's a break in the tax bracket or something?
It's almost like a bracket, you have tax brackets. So I would say it's a threshold. Once a person makes it, that level or a threshold, after that, then he's going to have to pay that level. Then he's going to have to pay after this level. It's hard for me to say it in English, because I don't know of a word that fits it. But it's a threshold that once the person reaches that threshold, then after that threshold, then they are subject to zakah, according to the level that is in that. And of course, for dhahab, for gold and silver, it's just one simple thing. It's the rubu' al-ushr, which is 2.5%. Rubu' is fourth of a tenth. A fourth of a tenth is 2.5%. Yeah. And so he says here, وَهُوَ نِصْفُ مِثْقَالٍ. And of course, this is, if you go back to the mithqal, then this would be a nisf mithqal, and there's 20 of these. So half of 20 is that 2.5%. And he says, وَفِي مَا زَادَ بِحِسَابِهِ. And so and also anything that goes over this 20 mithqal, so anything over 80 grams, all of it is according to that 2.5%. So 2.5%, and this is what it is. And so this is everything. You would just make qiyas on this, and you would say 2.5%, anything over 80 grams. And the same thing goes for currency as well. And he says here, when nisab al-waraqi, so then with the kasr al-ra is silver, not waraq. Waraq bi-fath al-ra is, of course, like papers. But waraq is actual, with the kasr al-ra, this is silver. So this is something to take note in Arabic. And so nisab al-waraqi mi'ata dirhamin. And so the nisab for silver is 200 dirham. And so 200 dirham is around like 450 grams, if I'm remembering properly. And so and so anyone who comes to this in silver, then in this case they would pay this they would pay this amount. Of course, we have gold and we have silver. So he says وفيه ربع العشر 2.5%. وهو خمسة دراهم. And so like how much would this be from the 200 dirahim? It'd be خمسة. It'd be 5 of them. And وفيما زاد بحسابه. And anything goes above it to that same amount, that same ratio. And so we have like currencies such as dollars, whether euros, all these other things. And these we would go off of the gold standard. And why do I say this? Like, and some people say you should go off of the silver standard for this. And the reason is because this is better for the poor people. The gold and silver ratio, this is something that's like, if you can look back at the gold and silver ratio for thousands of years, normally it was around 10%, 1 to 10. Or 1 to 11, and about 1 to 12. Like this is usually, it would be one part of gold to 10 parts of silver, normally. Now, it's ridiculous. Like the difference between is like 1 to 50 or 1 to 40. You can go look it up, but it's a huge difference. So we see that silver is no longer used as a currency. Also, if we're going to look at dollars, and most other currencies, the fiat currencies that we have, most of them were based on gold at the beginning. And it's the thing that actually holds, like when we look at silver now, does it hold like currency? Is anybody using it as currency? There's strange people out there that do, but like for the most part, it's not something that is normally used as currency. But gold is still used as currency. So we look at the gold's thing. And if we look at the person who has, like say the person who has the nisab now of like silver, how much money is this? Like if I were to remember from a while back when I did the math, the person of silver, it's about $450. This person is not rich in any way. Like somebody was able to, like they only have $450 in their bank all the way around the year. They're not hoarding cash. As opposed to someone who has $5,000 or $6,000, you're like, this is around the nisab of like dollars. If they had this for a whole year around, okay, this is something we can talk about. But this person is poor; they need money. Like seriously, like so. Of course, this is not doing a justice to the poor people that are mediocre, like the miskin. Like this person's miskin. Even if he's not fakir, he's miskin if he only has like 450 that he can hold for a year. And so this is do we need to hold to the silver or the gold? The thing is like silver, it has lost its value, so it's no longer at the same rate as gold, and gold still holds its value. So you would put all of your currencies to the gold. You see, how much is this worth in gold? Is it worth 80 grams of gold? Then this is what I go off of, and I make my zakat calculation based on the gold. And this is the fatwa that has been given by many scholars, and of them are like my Shaykh Ahmed Rushdi is also Ahmed Makrami, a Yemeni scholar and whatnot, that talk about this. And talk about the person who's got gold. Like if he's going on he's going on the silver standard, he's still poor. But if he goes on gold, there he goes. Like this is not helping people. This is not helping the poor people by taking from them, because they're poor. If that's where they're falling into. So, wallahu ta'ala. Yeah.
Question. So let's say for example I'm working and I make maybe like 300, 400,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I don't have anything saved that will go around the year, or I have a business, right, that I invested like 400,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it'll sound like a lot of money, but it is just go around. I make money, but then the money spent to things, right?
Yeah.
But I don't have anything saved. Is that
There's no zakah, no.
Wow.
Yeah, if this is like your personal money, this is not zakah. If you're trading and your thing goes into trading goods, then the goods have the urul tijara. If the money goes into like the trading goods that you're trading, but if it goes into other expenses and you're paying for something, you're trying to travel somewhere and you're spending like this, no.
Okay.
So it needs to have a whole year that comes around that saved amount of money.
Save money.
It doesn't, even if you have a lot of money. Yeah. So even if you do have a lot of money at one point in time, then you use it and you spend it and you actually put it into cars. Maybe you buy cars, maybe you buy all kinds of things. Maybe you buy cameras or, and all the things that take money. So like if you bought things, those things have no zakah on it, and you don't have the money that has zakah on it. So of course, as I mentioned before, no one should be running away from zakah. So if you're running away from zakah and you're just buying things to get away from zakah, this is a problem. But if you're spending money, like there's nothing that prevents you from spending the money, and when you spend that money, you're no longer subjected to zakah. After you've spent that, you're no longer under the person that needs zakah. So, of course, and make sure your intention is not running away from zakah in this, but there's no problem. There's no zakah on someone if they fell under this at any point in the year. Yeah. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And so the last thing he mentions here, and we'll close with this inshallah, is that he mentions وَلَا تَجِبُ فِي الْحُلِي الْمُبَاحِ زَكَاتٌ. So he says, and there's no, like huli is the things that someone would wear to make themselves beautiful, like the jewelry. There's no zakah that is obligatory in a permissible jewelry. And this is of course for men. If a man bought like a silver, or like if a man bought, I'll leave silver on the table, but if a man bought like say a gold necklace, first off, he's not allowed to wear the gold necklace. It's haram. So if he bought this, he's not allowed to wear this, and so there's going to be zakah in it. If he bought it for someone else and he's holding on to it for a whole year around this, of course, like it's his possession, and so there's going to be zakat in this. But as opposed to a woman, if she bought a necklace and like some bracelets and all this other stuff and all the other things that women love with gold, and she uses it like she bought it to wear it. This is as if like someone had a cow that they were actually using, which I didn't mention it here, but if a person used a cow for tilling, this cow doesn't fall into the amount of cows that would have zakah in it, because he's using it. It's used. It's something that has a use, and so the same thing with the woman and her jewelry. It's being used by her. Even if she only wears it like once in a blue moon, it's still something that has a use. And it has a use for her, and it's permissible for her. Since it's permissible and it has a use, then in this case, there's no zakat in it. And this is the view of the Shafi'i madhab in this case. And of course, there's long debates in this particular masala that we won't go into this level. But this is the view of the Shafi'i madhab is the permissible zakat, and this is also the view of many of the Sahaba as well, such as Aisha and others, that they would say that there's no zakat in that. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.
فلذلك فادع واستقم كما أمرت ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب وأمرت لأعدل بينكم الله ربنا وربكم لنا أعمالنا ولكم أعمالكم لا حجة بيننا وبينكم الله يجمع بيننا وإليه المصير.